All right, class, let's go ahead and talk about branding. Super duper fun conversation. I really wish that we were, again, in all here at the same time to have a conversation about this. But just as a result of the hybrid and online, unfortunately, we'll have to do this individually. But what I want from you and what I would ask of you is while you're engaging with this content, that you're not passively listening, that you're actively listening, that when I ask a question, you maybe even pause the video and answer it for yourself. Write down a couple questions. In the content quizzes, I often do reference these lectures. And so maybe taking notes or answering some of the questions I'll ask you will benefit you in part of that content quiz. But without further ado, let's dive in to branding, okay? Branding is a marketing term, and if you've taken a marketing class, you're pretty familiar with it. We'll talk a little bit more about that specific term in just a minute, but generally, branding is how an audience perceives you and perceives your value, okay? So what words would someone describe you as is often what your brand is. But what's different in the marketing perspective and why it has its own term for that is because it's strategic. It's chosen. It is a chosen set of descriptive words or adjectives, and it's usually portrayed with a logo or with certain colors, a certain type of appearance or aesthetic. And so what we're going to do right now is an activity exploring the branding of different slides, okay? So I've created all these different slides, and I just want you to take a moment and ask yourself, what emotions or thoughts come into your mind when you look at this slide right here, okay? Maybe some of them that pop up in your mind are minimalistic, simple, clean, professional, white space. Maybe you think it looks kind of boring, kind of bland. Maybe you think this is polished and refined. And what's interesting about branding as well is you can't control 100% of your audiences and how they perceive your brand. What we want is just the standard distribution. We want about 80% of our audience to think and feel the same way about our brand. And so, yeah, what feelings or thoughts or descriptors would you use for this slide? And then let's move on to the next one. So what if at the beginning, before you'd watched any of my other videos, this is the first time you walk into class or watch a video of mine online, and this is the slide that I have prepared, and I introduce myself and all that stuff. What would you think? What would you feel? Would you think, oh, this is so fun, this is so uplifting and light and happy? Or would you think, why did I join a business class for kindergartners? Or why is there so many animations? This is so distracting, and like it keeps repeating. And so, yeah, think about what emotion, what pathos, what brand words would you use for something like this? Childish, playful, light, unprofessional, whatever it might be. So take a moment, write down just a couple words that come to your mind as you look at this brand. How would you describe this brand? All right, next up, we've got this fun, futuristic, neonish. Maybe I had one student tell me it reminded them of like Windows from 2000. It's just got like that Tron, cyberpunk, Daft Punk type vibe. Yeah, what do you think? Do you think this would be a good fit for a professional business presentations class? Do you think this is maybe for like a tech conference, maybe something in the IT sector, but maybe not for marketing? Maybe it is. Maybe you like it. Maybe you like the shapes, that 3D appearance. Because, yeah, we're not only talking about color and words, but, yeah, shapes and general design. Interesting. Okay. Next up, we've got this number. Looks like we've got some green graph paper type looking stuff, a positive, negative symbol in the bottom left, top right. These are still high contrast colors, but a little bit more muted, a little bit less saturation, so to speak. Yeah, what do you think? Do you like it? Do you think this is a good balance of uniqueness where maybe the first one was just a little bit too bland? Or do you feel like this is too much? Do you feel like the plus and the minus have purpose and meaning? And does that convey, or are they just random symbols that don't really mean anything? And so it's a distraction. What do you think? Yeah. All right, next we have this guy. Very low contrast here, kind of hard to even see, but really fun shapes, really fun gradients. I had a student tell me that this kind of looks like glitching, like those little bars, like the little bar right here. My webcam is flipped. This is really bizarre. Anyway, yeah, like that little bar looks like a glitch. And so it kind of ruined it for them. But I don't know, maybe you like it. Do you think this is on brand for a professional business presentations class? It could be. It really could be. Why or why not? Well, again, what does this brand, if I as a professor wore clothes that were cohesive with this aesthetic, what would that communicate to you? All right, let's move on. What do you think about this one? Oh, got a little animation there. Okay. Is this on brand for a professional business presentations class? What brand words pop out to you? It's funny because I'm down here in the bottom right. It kind of looks like I'm like, oh, like glowing and creating some sort of, but that's not the slide. Here, I'll move myself so you can kind of see. I had a student say it reminds them of space and astronomy. And I was like, oh yeah, I could see that. But they said a lot of students don't like this one because they say that it's not really on brand for a branding you presentation in a marketing class. And I liked that comment. I thought that was interesting. But other students like it for its simplicity. It's very clear what the message is. It's no nonsense. It's concise, but it's got a little fun animation, good looking fonts. So yeah, what do you think about this as the branding for a professional business presentations course? Okay, last one. What do y'all think about this one? Very high contrast, sharp contrast, black, white, big, bold letters, got some accent lines and shapes. And then they have like this little flickering. Do you like that? The little glitch. Do you like that? Does that draw your attention? Does it keep your interest? Is it a little distracting? Is this bold and strong? You know, what words come to your mind when you're looking at this one? How would you describe those? Okay, so now I'm going to go through all of them again, and I want you to just think about which are your top 1 and 2, and then which one is your least favorite. So let's go back to the beginning. Got this guy, this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, and this one. Which one do you feel represents a conversation about branding as well as professional business presentations? Well, if you chose this one, I'm very happy because that's the theme, that's the brand I chose for today's lecture. So if it wasn't, that's totally okay. And usually in my classes, there'll be about 2/3, a half to 2/3 of the class that likes this one the best. And then a lot of students like this one. This one's probably the second most popular one. This one's probably this one, and this one's probably the third most popular. And then obviously that one, that and those ones are the least popular in general. But anyway, yeah, fun little activity there. Just get your brain turning and thinking about some of these things. So these are the 3 topics that we're going to be covering today in this conversation about branding. We're going to be covering what is a brand in that first key point. The second one is what is a differentiating factor or unique selling proposition. And then we're going to, on the third point, we're going to cover what are the things that we can do, what are the essentials to manage that brand. So let's get started with what is branding. So a big thing in my class, especially whenever you present, you are not allowed to read from the slides unless it's a quote, okay? So this is not a quote, this is a definition, so I'm going to let you read it, but I am going to point out a few key words in here. The first is differentiate on that first line. Differentiate on that first line. And then the last 2 words, strategic goal. We are differentiating to achieve a strategic goal. That is the most important part of personal branding. Because if you don't identify what your goal is for your brand, then you're not going to know if your differentiation is working or is effective or is even relevant. Okay, well, let's differentiate. Let's identify what that word means. Well, if you look at the first part of it, different. Differentiation is just what is different about you compared to somebody else. Okay? So there are a lot of ways that human beings are different one from another. Every human being has a unique look. Every human being has unique skills, backgrounds, talents, natural abilities, different experiences, etc. So when we're talking about differentiating ourselves, we can very quickly identify what's different about us. But what does that accomplish if we aren't using that to achieve something specific? So what would be the strategic goal of your brand? Well, think about some of your favorite YouTubers or TikTok influencers, maybe some people you follow on Instagram or other social media. Think about maybe some professional athletes that you follow or people in the business world. Generally, they have a very specific brand that differentiates themselves from other people, and they can refine that brand down to just a few words. Most content creators online will only create content that falls within 3 to 4 categories because that is part of their brand. That's what makes them unique and different. So for example, if I have a beautiful voice and I can sing like an angel, okay, but I do this very cool wispy flair with my voice whenever I sing, and it's very unique to me, and that's very identifiable. Well, that is going to greatly increase my chances of being a successful artist and musician rather than just being classically trained where my voice can mesh and blend perfectly with everybody else. I'm probably going to end up being a background singer instead of a front line, headliner. That's what I meant to say. A headliner for my own concert. Is because we need something that makes us a little bit different than other people. Another good example is if you are an accountant and you have 50 other accountants applying for the same position. What can you demonstrate that makes you different than those other 49 accountants who have the same experience that can bring value? Now, being a beautiful singer, which I am not, but being a beautiful singer, if I was in this scenario, won't help me in this accounting scenario. What could be? Well, maybe I've got people skills. Well, maybe I have a ton of experience as a carpenter and I'm applying for a large carpentry firm accounting position. So I'm going to come in not dressed just in a nice accounting-like suit, but maybe I'll come in with a wooden necktie that I had handcrafted myself or something. And just by bringing that in, of course, the person interviewing me is going to ask me like, hey, what's with that wood tie? Like, oh, I made this. I actually have been a carpenter for most of my life. And that's why I want to be an accountant here, is because I love woodworking. I love this industry. I know a lot about it. Boom, boom, boom. You're differentiating yourself and you're demonstrating how what makes you different is valuable to the person interviewing you. So in this week's assignment, in the discussion post, I'm asking you to identify a few key words that you would use to describe you in your brand towards a strategic goal. So in your career, that reputation that we reference with the ethos, pathos, logos, what do you want your reputation to be? What 3 to 4 words would you want others to describe you as? And how can you convey that in your appearance, in your vocal delivery, in your presentations, etc.? So that's what we're exploring here in that first week. What is different about you? And how does that help you achieve your strategic goal for your career? Okay, going back to the slides. All right, well, how are we going to do it? First, we have to identify and define our brand. So just like I mentioned just barely, what is your shtick? Are you, in my example, it's the accountant, the carpenter accountant. If you're a coder, maybe you'll say, I am a coding nerd ninja. And you somehow are able to tie being a nerd or nerd ninja into benefiting a company who wants to hire you. Are you a fiery femme fatale photographer? Are you a comforting, warm blanket, friendly capybara? What words would you use to describe your brand? And again, that's what we're doing here. That first section, we're going to identify what those are and try and describe it. The second point here, you see this little GPS thing, is positioning. Okay, that's a huge part of marketing, and accordingly in business presenting and presenting ourselves and presenting our brand. How are we positioning our brand different from our competitors? So if you are a coding nerd ninja or what have you, how are you positioning that in, first off, like where you're putting that? Obviously, I'm not going to boast about being a coding nerd ninja if I'm applying to a position as a financial broker at Merrill Lynch. That's not going to benefit. So that's poor positioning if I'm trying to position my brand in that industry. So we have to think about where we're trying to put our brand. But then also asking yourself, where would you normally see people similarly branded to what you are? And then how can you position yourself uniquely amongst those people? So if there are, of those 50 accountants, oh, okay, hang on, 5 of them are also carpenter accountants. Okay, well, how am I going to position myself to be just a little bit different from them? And how do I convey my brand? How you express that can be the difference between getting the job or not. And then the third point here, the guy holding the gears, we've got managing that brand. So everything in marketing has to do with analytics. We have to test some marketing materials. We put out a commercial, we put out print, or we do digital ads or whatever, and we have to monitor that and analyze it and see what's working and what's not. Well, so it is with your personal brand. When we say these 3 to 4 words, those aren't written in stone. If we feel like we aren't positioned in the right place, we have to analyze that, evaluate that, and refine that. And then we have to manage that brand. Once we test a few different things, a few different keywords or different appearances, or maybe the carpeting accountant isn't working, and so I'm going to say something like, I'm the small town accountant, where I come from a rural area, but I know how to talk to people, so I've got like this southern country town charm that I'm going to employ as part of my accountancy because I did grow up in Tulsa, Oklahoma, or whatever. And so I test that, and hey, that I don't know what it is, but that works. And so I'm getting a lot more job interviews or whatever because I've repositioned something unique about me. I'm not from Tulsa, Oklahoma. I was just giving an example, but that we're testing a few different things. And then once you find what seems to be working with your target audience, then we need to manage that brand across all of our platforms. So is your LinkedIn consistent brand-wise with your TikTok? Are your color palettes the same? Are your filters that you use when you post consistent? And again, just hop on Instagram or TikTok and you'll see that the biggest influencers have a very consistent appearance across all of their platforms, and that's what we need to replicate and do. Even if we aren't trying to gain a huge following of millions of people and we're just trying to get that career job, I promise you recruiters do this. I've been on multiple hiring committees for director level positions and lower, and every every hiring committee I've been a part of, we have looked up their social media, what's available, and just try to get another perspective, another read on them, because there's only so much information you can glean from a 30-minute virtual interview. So these hiring managers will check that out. If you're giving a formal presentation, you obviously want each of your slides to look the same. I mean, just going back to this example, how weird would it be is if the first slide looked like this, and then when I talked about defining personal branding, I used this aesthetic, and then moving forward with managing your brand, it looks like this. It would just be very unsettling. Like, we as humans, we like consistency, and aesthetically, it's much better if everything is fits together cohesively. So in your presentations, this is kind of like a like a no-brainer. So then why isn't a no-brainer for every public portrayal of who we are? So that's what I'm going to invite you to do. This isn't necessarily an assignment, because I'm not going to go monitor your socials, but I do invite you as a professional exercise to evaluate your social medias. Create a LinkedIn if you don't have one, you're definitely going to want one, and try and create a little bit more cohesion across your marketing mix, your multi-channel personal brand, and then testing that and seeing how effective it is. But again, you're probably not going to get too deep into that until after you graduate and you are a little bit deeper into your career, but it never hurts to start now. And it's better to start experimenting and testing now than later. Okay, moving forward, we already talked a bit about this one, the unique selling proposition. That is just what is unique and different about you. It's what differentiates you. But the unique selling proposition is the key value that you are hitting home on multiple times. So if being from Tulsa, Oklahoma is like a quirky flair that differentiates me, well, I have to show how that brings value. And so my unique selling proposition as a rural accountant might be, I don't miss the human connection. I see how the money connects with the people, and I'm able to not just view people as numbers like a lot of accountants do. I view people as people. And so as part of my audits, I will go and interview and interact and talk with people. And I've actually found that I'm able to reconcile a lot more accountant discrepancies by doing this. And so if I can bring actual data value to what makes me unique, or what makes me different, that is a unique selling proposition. It's a competitive advantage, if you're familiar with that term. If we're like, let's think about the superhero multiverse, whatever. If you're Thor, what's Thor's unique selling proposition? It's Mjolnir. It's his thunder hammer. It's like, if Thor didn't have a hammer, who would he be? Like, nobody would. He's just like some guy from Asgard. I don't know. Think about like X-Men. Every mutant power would be that individual's unique selling proposition. Side note, if you guys ever seen, I mean, these ones are a little bit older, but there's like one porcupine guy who just like hugs people and then porcupines them, and then that's how he takes them out. That's not a great unique selling proposition compared to like Magneto, who can move things that are made of metal with his mind. Like, come on now. Anyway, pretty funny. Steve Jobs. Let's look at some more business practical examples here. What was Steve Jobs' unique selling proposition? What was his brand? Well, if you had to reduce him to one word, it would be innovator, and it would be potentially marketer. But his image is very identifiable. He always wore that black turtleneck and the blue jeans, which was so contrary at the time to the standard professional business attire. Like, everyone was rocking suits back then. But Steve Jobs really opened up that image of a more casual professional with the black turtleneck. He was stylish, popular. He was kind of a jerk, which was part of his brand. Really, it's fun to kind of try and look at iconic figures and figure out what their brand is and what their unique selling proposition is. But with his company, it's very obvious. The brand is Apple. And that brand alone is worth over $500 billion. At least it used to be before this 2022 tech crash, 2023, moving into 2023 tech crash. But yeah, prior to that, just the brand, not the assets, not the iPhones, not the inventory, not the real estate. None of that is included in this $500 billion brand. If you could buy the Apple logo, it would cost you $500 billion because that brand has so much value to it. And it's because of the unique selling propositions or the competitive advantages that Apple has. Okay, we're getting a little lengthy here, so let's keep crushing through this. The effectiveness of your brand is your reputation combined with reach. And this is generally the value. So going back to the Apple example, Apple is an international brand. Everybody knows what the iPhone is. And so the reputation is high quality, ease of use, tech, stylish, trendy, whatever. That's the reputation. And then because we have international reach, their brand value is through the roof. So as you develop your personal brand, whatever you are known for, as that increases, along with how many people view that, or how the powerful people as well, if you're able to get your brand image into the mind of a key decision leader in an industry, well, boom, your reach has just exponentially multiplied. So that's just an easy way to strategically look at this. If I can increase my reputation and the reach or the influence of the people who are exposed to my brand value is going to go up. And that's how you get executive level positions later on in your career. Yeah, this is important, guys. Your brand must be authentic, okay? It needs to come from an understanding of who you are and what you're about. And what's really hard about this, and maybe I'll just do just looking at me here for a sec. The challenging thing about authenticity is we as human beings, especially when we're starting out in our careers, we really want to people please. We want to be the perfect employee, or we want to be the perfect hire, and we want to be, when we're giving a presentation, we want to be perceived as professional and for good reason, right? And we sometimes lose a core piece of who we are when we're pretending or we are not being authentic. So when we have something that's unique about us, that we're differentiating, that is often a strength. But the duality of existence is, if you have a strength, then you have weaknesses. And we need to be honest about that and not shy away from that and lean away from who we are entirely as a human being. And I'll just give you an example here. So one of my closest friends growing up, his father was the founder of a very popular gym, Vasa, if you're familiar, if you know about Vasa. So originally it was Gold's Gym, and with my very close friend, his dad was one of the original owners of Gold's Gym, now Vasa. And so he had a clear nepotistic path to tons of success in this industry. He could have been an executive at it. He threw himself in it. I mean, actually, he spent lots and lots of time working in that field. He started as a front desk guy. He was offered manager positions. But the more and more that he immersed himself into the business model of the company, the more he realized that the way that he would have to act and represent himself would be inauthentic to who he is. The salesmanship, some of the different practices. I'm just trying to say this without trying to create a negative brand for this business, because it really isn't negative, and it wasn't really like negative for my friend. It's just it was incompatible is the best way to describe it. So instead of inheriting this multi-location franchise where he really could have just been offered it to him, he chose instead to be authentic to who he was. And when he went to college, he crafted his own type of degree through the university college at the time. And he went on to follow his interests, his passions, what things were more compelling and interesting to him, because the strong parts of his authentic self were not competitively advantageous to that industry, and it would not have made him happy. It would not have made him fulfilled. It would have been a dissatisfying career. So when we are trying to build a brand, we don't want to be creating something that isn't authentic to who we are. We really do want to reflect, introspectively analyze what are our strengths, what are our weaknesses, what makes us unique, and how that can bring value to what we want to engage in. But just be true to who you are. I know it sounds cheesy and cliche and all that, and we'll talk a little bit more about this here in just a second. So don't be inauthentic. Be your authentic self. Again, as a business presenter, if you're an introvert, you might think, oh, well, I'm never going to be a good presenter. And that is just abhorrently false. Guys, I am an introvert myself. Some of my favorite presenters, Brené Brown, among them, is one of the most effective public speakers, presenters that's out there right now. And it's because the reason why these presenters are so effective is because they are authentic. They lean into that shyness or that, like, oh man, before I walked on stage, I felt like vomiting, but here I am, and we're gonna keep going. It's like leaning into that weakness that makes you relatable and endearing, and your audience actually likes to see those authentic moments. For example, if you forget what you were saying in a presentation, it's best not to fill that space with instead just, I completely forgot what I was about to say. We'll continue anyway. Just something like that is just owning that instead of being insecure that you're forgetting or trying to fill that space with gobbledygook. It's just so much more relatable. And you could even relate to the audience in that moment and say, have you guys ever just been mid-sentence and forgot what you were about to say? Because that's happening to me right now. Like, that is such a endearing thing, and your audience will reward you for that. It actually builds ethos. It builds trust and relatability with your audience. So you can be you. You don't have to put on this whole facade of, I'm a perfect human being who can do everything and I have no weaknesses. My weaknesses is perfection. Everything I do is just too perfect. You know what I mean? And get that nonsense out of here. Again, in these hiring committees that I've been on for these director level positions or whatever, like if we sniff out that inauthentic delivery, like we feel like the person's just trying to answer the questions the way that we want them to answer instead of how they authentically would answer them, we disqualify them because you can see through it and you don't trust it. So I'm gonna move on. I've already beat this dead horse for a pretty long time now, but it's really important to me that you care about creating a brand that is authentic to who you are and staying true to that and not trying to be somebody you're not. So with that being said, we have to figure out more about who we are. Is the work tolerable is the question I'm gonna ask you. So you say, okay, well, if that's the case, Charles, I got to figure out who I am and what I'm about. What does this second word mean? Well, it might be a little cynical of me, but I think this is also the real world. You know the phrase, love your job, never work a day in your life. It's nonsense. That is complete nonsense. There is no job on this planet that is so good that every aspect of it does not feel like work. That doesn't exist. But what does exist are jobs where there are parts of it that you absolutely love and the working part is tolerable. And that's the part I want you to focus on as you prepare to launch yourself into your career. It's one thing to love the best part of your job, but for sustainable career success and longevity, is the worst part of that job tolerable to you? Because the worst part of every job will feel like work. And let me give you an example. There's a book by Mark Manson called The Subtle Art of Not Giving a F Word. And it is a phenomenal example of this concept where he tells a story about how he wanted to be a rock star. He wanted to be on stage and have audiences losing their minds and rocking out with him and all this stuff, right? But he absolutely hated practicing, and he hated trying to get people to consistently practice with him as part of a band. And the thought of calling up these dive bars and these clubs and begging them to let him perform and sell tickets, like the worst parts of being a musician, a rock star, he absolutely hated, and he wouldn't do it. He couldn't do it. I think about summer sales, okay? The idea, the best parts of summer sales, I think, are very attractive to most people. Oh, sweet. You helped somebody get something that they wanted, and you made a ton of money doing it. Hey, well, anybody would love doing that. But what's the worst parts of that job? Walking door to door, getting rejected. It's hot. You're uncomfortable. Rejection after rejection after. The worst parts of that job, if they aren't tolerable, we won't even try it. Okay? Think about being a doctor. Okay? Or we'll do police officer. A lot of us romanticize what being a police officer is like when we're a kid. We're like, oh, we're going to stop the bad guys and we're going to help people. And like, that's the great thing. But the truth is, police officers spend 80 to 90% of their work filling out paperwork. It's not even like in the field stuff. It's filing reports and doing that. And so if that's not tolerable, if that sounds terrible and you just hate the idea of that, then you shouldn't be a police officer. But if it is tolerable, then the best parts of those jobs just makes it that much richer. I'll give you an example for me personally. I love teaching. Teaching is one thing that is so fun. I absolutely love dialoguing with students. I love learning from students. I love engaging with students, and talking about these concepts is super duper fun. The worst part of this job is grading. It's not fun to grade stuff. And it's tolerable though to me. Like it's not painful like it is painful for me if I were to do summer sales to just experience 6 hours of rejection. It's just not fun to me. And grading isn't necessarily fun like it is when we're dialoguing as a class and as a professor to students and all that. But it doesn't feel painful. It's tolerable. Like I don't mind grading. It's all right. It's, So if you can say that about the worst aspect of that career or that job, then that's going to be a pretty solid job for you. Also think about the culture of a company. Again, I know I'm getting a little long-winded again on this, but if I'm a doctor and I go to IHC, the culture there might be so terrible that it's not the work itself that makes it insufferable, but it's the culture and the environment, the values of that hospital, whatever it might be. But then I go over to Regents and woo, it's like way better. Great people. They share my same values, and I actually am able to enjoy the work that I'm doing. So it isn't, you have to look at those two factors really, is the work in and of itself. If you're a coder and you enjoy the problem solving and the worst aspects of like once you have all your code and you run the program and it still doesn't work and you have to spend 20 hours figuring like what little squiggly is messing up, bugging out the whole program. And if that's not insufferable to you and you don't mind that, like it's just part of the job, then that's a great job for you. But if you're like, no, I can't, I give up, like this is so frustrating, I can't do it, then that's not a job for you. And that's okay. There's no shame in that. There's no like, oh, you're so weak, you can't do door-to-door sales because you can't handle the rejection. Dude, that's nonsense. That's just shaming for no reason. It's just different people experience different things because they like different things. We're unique, different human beings. And so whatever it might be, if it's if you find that work tolerable, that's a good career for you. All right, moving on. We're going to skip over this. We're going to talk about purpose, mission, value, money. Okay? Once you figure out what your purpose is in life, and I know that's such a ambiguous, like enigmatic thing, and but it is important to understand philosophically what matters to you, because it'll help you identify your brand, it'll help you identify your career, and everything just kind of waterfalls off of cascades from that. And so that's why we're talking about it, but in a more pragmatic context. So for example, one of my key purposes is to destigmatize mental health. So my wife and I, we own a mental health clinic here in Orem, and both of us care a lot about normalizing mental health as part of like a healthy life. So as much as we take care of our bodies physically with good diet and good exercise, and like, so those physical, if we get sick, we go to the doctor. We want people to feel that same way about mental health. If I'm having a sick day where I got like food poisoning or something, and I take the day off, that's not considered weird. But if we have a bad mental health day where we're experiencing extreme stress, anxiety, or having a depression cycle or whatever it might be, we want to normalize taking that day to take care of yourself, because mental health and physical health are intimately tied together, and it's just a better life. I mean, the brain is literally how you experience happiness and life through. So if that vessel isn't taken care of, like, what's the point? So anyway, that's one of my purposes in life, is to normalize mental health care. And so that enigmatic kind of, up in the air needs to be strategically focused and narrowed down to something actionable before something positive can happen, before I can fulfill that purpose. And that's what a mission is. A mission is the strategic execution of your purpose. So in my case, we opened a mental health clinic. That was how we were going to fulfill our purpose, is by building a mental health clinic that creates value for other people. And that's how you know if the mission of your purpose is successful, is if it can generate value for other people. So at our mental health clinic, we offer therapeutic services to couples, individuals, and families. And so that creates value. And when we create value for other people, we get money, because they will pay us to receive that value of those therapeutic services. So once we create value through our mission and we get money, we can then reinvest that money into the same mission. We can open another clinic in another location. Maybe we can expand some online services, whatever it might be. Or I can choose to create an entire new mission. Maybe I'm going to create a nonprofit organization that markets to the broader public about mental health and therapeutic services. So I can choose. But that is so important. It's not enough to just be like, my purpose is to help people, or my purpose is to provide for my family, or whatever that might be. We need to get granular, and we need to get specific and strategic with it, so that we can analyze through data, really, whether we're creating value through the mission we've selected to help us fulfill our purpose, so that we can get money and then perpetuate that and build out. Clay Christensen has a great quote on this. Like I said, we can read quotes word for word from the slide, but I'm just going to, again, highlight a specific thing here. In the end, a purpose, I'm going to swap out that word, the sentence right here towards the end. In the end, a purpose is nothing but good intentions unless it's effectively implemented. Okay, so you can talk all you want about having clear purpose and strategy for your life, but ultimately it means nothing if you do not have a mission that creates value, that creates money that you can then reinvest in it. So good stuff, Clayton Christensen. So that whole process that we talked about is your life strategy. If you can say, this is my purpose, and my strategy to fulfill my purpose is to create a mission that creates value for others, that they will then give me money so then I can reinvest that into my mission or a new mission. That is your life strategy. Boom. Well, let's just bring it all together then, okay? You know what? I'm going to go back here though first. Personal branding, okay? We're going back to this definition, because if you have a strategic goal or your life strategy, then your personal brand, wow, yeah, here we go. Your personal brand, what makes you different, needs to help you accomplish your strategy for your life. Are you connecting the dots here now? Branding is all about conveying the differentiating value of you to help you accomplish your life strategy, which will help you fulfill your purpose in life. I hope you put all that together. I know it's kind of a lot, but it's taking this ethereal concept of what our existence matters to us in life and inputting it and translating that into a strategic, executable business, career, real life, actionable context. And that's valuable because then you can go into every single job interview knowing exactly what you're about, how this job will help you accomplish it, and you'll know you'll enjoy it because you know that the work there is tolerable, and you'll be able to focus way more on generating value and creating money and then accomplishing those purposes and just your life strategy than just floating around like shotgun approach at jobs and industries that you just, maybe you'll land on something that's cool. Nah, let's not waste time. Let's dive into our life strategy, build a brand around that, and then get what we want quicker, more effectively, more efficiently. Okay, so just to recap here at the end, we are going to reflect, figure it out. That's part of your discussion post today. You're going to build your brand for that life strategy targeted towards your first mission. I'm assuming or hoping that graduating college is one of those missions, and or maybe a job immediately after graduating is one of your first missions for your life strategy. And then I'll flip this up here so you can see it a little better. We are going to execute, evaluate, and revise throughout this course on what your brand is. And usually by the end of the semester, most of my students want to change the brand words that they used in this first discussion post, because as they're practicing and executing it through these activities and assignments, they realize, hey, I'm going to tweak this. I'm going to improve on that. And it's really, really valuable, really fun stuff. So we're going to talk a lot about branding yourself throughout the course of the semester. All right, and that's it. So let's make sure that in this week's discussion, again, you tailor that to your unique situation. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out as always. I cannot wait to read your answers and learn more about you and what you want your mission to be and how you'll create value for others and how your brand will align with that. I love learning about it. Please believe me when I say that, because again, as a teacher, one of my missions as a teacher is to show you how education can connect to valuable real world stuff for you. So please lean into this. Please show me what you're interested in. Talk to me about what you want to do. And I'd love to help you get there throughout the rest of the semester.